Got it.
Good morning, everybody. Just a delayed reaction there from me. I'm Annette McCoy, and with me this morning
Hmm.
is Janet Hickox, and we're talking about things astrological this morning. In particular, Janet, it's to do with the relationship between the moving planets.
That is correct. Because what I did, Annette, is every month I kind of look ahead
Hmm.
and my in my mind I'm looking for what's the biggest news for the month, right? And the last several months we've had lots of things, eclipses and moving in and out of signs and things like that. When I looked at November, there really wasn't anything like that, but I noticed that literally, and you're not going to be able to see it, but literally, oops, that's upside down. The entire calendar was filled with aspects between planets, which are literally the relationships that the planets have with one another as they're moving through the sky. And I
Hmm.
thought, well, this is a great time to get people up to speed on how the aspects work. And we hear words all the time like an opposition, or I'll say a planet is conjunct another planet, or it's in, different words, sextile, square, blah, blah, blah. And what does that really mean? Right. Some people get very confused about astrology because of those things. So I
Right.
thought maybe we'd clear that up a bit today. And by the by, go over all of the fun ways that the planets are interacting with one another for the month of November.
Excellent. All right. Well, I would like to welcome everybody here. If you would like to make comments, please go into the chat room on Angel Heart Radio Facebook page. I think you can do the same from YouTube. However, I haven't checked that out. But welcome.
Oh,
Yes, I'm not sure about that, but we always like the interaction. So we'd love to know that people are there. And if you have questions, feel free to fire them because Janet likes to answer questions too, so that we're
I'm such a good
extending our
Gemini.
knowledge. You are a fount of information, Janet, when it comes to astrology. And I just feel as though I'm such a novice. Yes, the planets are up there and the star signs are there. How much more do I know? I feel not very much.
This is why I'm here, right? This is
That's it.
why I'm here. And now I just discovered something. Like while you were talking, I had a moment because you said something about YouTube. And I just realized that we are actually broadcasting live to YouTube right now.
Uh-huh.
So for Tom, who has an aversion to Facebook and wants to listen to us, he can actually go to YouTube and listen to us on Angel Heart Radio's YouTube page. So I'm going to let him know really quickly.
Well, is
YouTube.
that Tom Wright?
Yes.
He's here. Hi,
Oh,
ladies. When you
hello.
go to the Facebook page, you then have to click under more the word live. It's not automatically there as a post. Oh, well.
Oh, well, that's something new too.
Thank
But
you.
Tom, if you want to, you can go to your favorite YouTube channel. And actually, you've got to go to the Angel Heart Radio YouTube channel, and we are broadcasting live there as well. So it's all good.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you, Tom. It's always lovely to have Tom along.
It is indeed, especially since I didn't see him this morning.
All right.
Yeah, this is my second show today.
Yes. Oh, you are amazing, Janet. So you're
Uh,
doing, are you doing a midweek one now? 'Cause you were.
oh, just the either the first or the last Wednesday of the month. I
Mm-hmm.
go on air with my friend Tam AU from the Energy Almanac, and we talk about the energies for the month ahead. So this morning we got together and talked about November. And for those of you who don't know what the Energy Almanac is, it's this fabulous book that I am a contributor to. And of course, there are several others. It is, I don't know if I might have to close off my screen so everybody can see it, but this was the 2023. I'm going to have to, hold on. I'm going to show it because I just think it's so lovely. Oops, I ended my video. That is not what I wanted to do. Uh, I'm going to go to a no background. There we go. So show you the Energy Almanac.
Oh,
And
look at
this was the
that.
2023. It's filled with all kinds of information from the astrological information for the week to the best yoga poses for that week, the best scents, oils, essential oils, um, the food, finances, and family, plants. And as well, I do the shadow and the gifts of each week of the year. So here we go. And now the 2024 is available starting today. So,
Fantastic. That's
yeah,
what a great idea. I'm interested in the
yeah,
yoga poses. How
yeah.
cool's that?
Yeah, and it's, filled with like space even to, be able to write your observations or your feelings or, things that you've noticed. Each month has this beautiful picture that goes along with it, an art work that
Hmm.
my friend Tam has done. Look at this one since you like yoga. That was June's.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. The
And
cobra.
it's spiral bound. If you were one of the next 100 people to order, you'll get a spiral bound if you want. And I can post my chat in the chat. I can post my link for people who want to go in and buy it. So
That would be
anyway, I didn't mean to
fabulous.
be that shamelessly plugging the Energy Almanac, but it is
No,
a
I'm
wonderful
so
thing.
pleased that you did that, Janet. Excellent. So,
Yeah,
yes,
good,
please
good, good.
pop it in there.
I will do
Mm.
that as soon as I think about where I put it. And you know how sometimes, your brain is working and other times it is not. And anyway, but that's not what we're here to talk about. To talk about these possible relationships that
Yeah.
point out
Oh,
energies are
before you,
playing, right?
sorry, Janet, before you start,
So,
Tammy has joined us. Hi, yes,
hey,
Janet is
Tammy.
awesome and is the energy, and so is the Energy Almanac. I have been using it for 5 years.
Yeah,
What?
and yeah, 2023 was the fifth year. And so here we are now in years and getting ready to write year seven. We
Fantastic.
celebrate before the year is up. So anyway, it is a fantastic piece of work. And there, I think, are five of us that contribute to that. So
Hmm.
I'm going to drop the uh, link into chat for you so that you can share that with people, maybe.
Thank you.
Um, I got it. Why won't it let me do? Oh, it did. Now I just have to hit enter. Perfect. All that's done. So hello, Tammy, and hello, Tom, the two T's.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So getting back to the meat and potatoes of what we're here today about is,
Hmm.
November astrologically is filled with a lot of different transits of planets. And when we talk about transits, we're talking about how the planets move around the wheel. And those transits appear in everybody's charts, right? Everybody has the same transit going on, but it happens in different places in each person's chart. So each person can kind of experience the transit in a different way. And when I was looking at the energy for the month, I realized how many days there were that actual transits going on. And I thought it was a really good time for us then to review all about the transit energies. So I'm going to kind of talk about the transit, and then I'm going to talk about it in the context of the month of November so we can kind of put all the pieces together. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything
Perfect.
works, Janet. You're always so efficient and well planned. It's gorgeous.
Well, thank you for being flexible. And today, then, we're going to start with what are called oppositions. Now, oppositions are just what they sound like, right? They are planets that are in exact opposition to one another or in a 180-degree relationship to one another. And by the way, all of these different aspect patterns that we're going to talk about are really about the geometric relationship, right? So you're going to hear me say things like 180 degrees. And that 180 degrees is what forms an opposition, which is putting two planets that are in opposite places of the chart in opposite signs, and they are generally considered challenging aspects. And that's partly because um, each sign on the opposition has different ways of behavior, right? Different ways of acting in the world. And it causes a sort of seesaw energy for each person as we attempt to balance the energies that are in the opposition. So oppositions can be places where it's difficult for us to integrate everything, right? Both energies don't integrate very easily. And the way that we can really see this is when we do galactic astrology. We can see that when an opposition comes up between in your own galactic astrology chart, a lifetime there wasn't even able to be completely integrated. So we likely come to Earth to try to integrate those oppositions. But there is some elemental compatibility. The signs are complementary, or I mean the elements are complementary. So for example, Gemini and Sagittarius, Gemini is air, Sagittarius is fire, and they happen to be complementary elements. So they work well together on the elemental side of things, but there's a natural difference in how each of the planets in one of those signs would operate. So the
Mm-hmm.
first set of oppositions that we come up to in November starts tomorrow, where it's actually already, for all intents and purposes, already activated. And that is the sun in an opposition to Jupiter. And the sun, of course, being the brightest light, right? Our purpose, our gifts and our talents and our personality and who we are at the very, personality level is in the sun. And Jupiter is the planet of growth and expansion, and also optimism and the evolution of our consciousness. So the two planets themselves are pretty compatible. You put
Mm-hmm.
them in opposite signs, right? The sun right now in Scorpio and Jupiter in Taurus. And now we have this conflict about how do we balance the Taurus and Scorpio energies for those two planets. And this is why we talk about the opposition as being challenging, because when you think about Scorpio energy, it's deep, it's intense, it's uh, it's definitely very transformational. And then when we get to Taurus on the other side, we have this grounded earth energy that is very comfortable where it is and doesn't necessarily like to make change. But Scorpio is a sign that will process through anything in its life and wants to move on with the game, on with the show. So we have possibly this, setup in our charts for the first couple of days of the month here, where we are kind of having to go deeper, but at the same time, stay grounded, right? Follow our passion, follow our passion, but don't go so deep into it that you lose sight of the whole picture. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an opposition. And we have another opposition. The whole first week of the month is all about oppositions, which is why I started with the oppositions, right? The next day, we have Venus in an opposition to Neptune. And Neptune and Venus are higher octaves of one another. So, Venus being the octave of love here on Earth, relationships here on Earth, and Neptune being the relationship we have with spirit, or unconditional love. We still have love as principle in both of them, one being much more of the affectionate, romantic sort, and the other one being more of the spiritual love. Well, when they're in an opposition, we're being asked to embody love, big
Mm-hmm.
L love, right? In all of its respects, right? So we might be um, having to face where, we have to unconditionally love someone that we have distinct issues with, perhaps in our own families, in our communities. Um, Applying love seems to be the name of the game that day, right? Or for those next few days. But the opposition point here is a little bit tempered because Venus and Neptune work well together, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
in love, if you're staying aligned in love, love of self, as well as love of those around you, then the energy of the opposition is easier for us to integrate, right? We can integrate the love energy easier.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the day after that, we have Mercury in an opposition to Uranus. Now, they are also the same kind of issue where we have Mercury being the lower aspect of the mind. Um, and when I say lower, I don't mean that as a value statement. I mean that as the lower frequency, meaning we're here on the planet and it's about our minds and how we think and how we believe and all of that here on the planet, while Uranus rules the higher mind, where
Mm-hmm.
inspiration and ideas and the unexpected aha moment or epiphany can happen. So we have an opposition, but the opposition is giving us more access to more mindfulness. I
Mm-hmm.
think the very definition of that opposition would be mindfulness. But we also have to work to integrate both levels of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to come that easy, right? We have to be able to see the higher road, and we have to be able to understand where we might be caught in patterns of thinking that keep us attached to the lower frequency. So the opposition, and this will be on Saturday, my Saturday, your Sunday, works out in a way that helps us integrate more of that mindfulness in our lives. Does all that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes, it's a lot of information, isn't it? Now, you
Yeah.
mentioned the spiritual realm, and Tom has been saying that happy day or happy day of the dead, honor our ancestors. The veil is really thin these few days around Halloween.
That is true. That is true. And today is the Day of the Dead or All Saints Day, El Dia de los Muertos, if you are so inclined to speak it in Espanol. And
Yes,
it is a day
that's
where
what.
we honor the ancestors. Yesterday was more we honor sort of the dying, the transformational energies of death and rebirth or death and living. And today we honor all the ancestors that have passed over. And that spirit is always with us, right? Their spirits are never gone. They're never
No.
gone, right?
Mm,
We just don't see them with our eyes or hear them with our ears. We can't reach out and touch them, but we they're there nonetheless.
yes.
So
Yes.
it's an interesting day. Um, on Friday, and this is doesn't have anything to do with the aspects or the relationships of planets, but Saturn, the planet of duty and responsibility, form and structure, karma, he is moving out of his retrograde station and into direct station, which means he'll be starting to, from our position here on Earth, look like he is moving forward. And this is happening at 0 degrees, basically, which is the entry point that he made into the sign of Pisces back in March. So this Friday is sort of almost, and even today and tomorrow, I would say give us some sense of kind of repeating energies that we experienced from March until June, or the
Hmm.
end of May when he turned retrograde. And then that energy fresh into Pisces at that time went internal, right? So we were working through the internal fields of where we have boundaries, where we don't have boundaries, where it is that we have to apply grounded spirituality, and not just flights of fancy or, the woo woo. Not that I don't enjoy woo woo because I do, but
I
woo woo is only one half of that equation. So Saturn coming into direct motion now, helping us to, you know, make tangible the things that became intangible in May. And it's the first opportunity we'll have to maybe exercise some new skills with our boundaries, exercise some new skills in bringing down fear, right? Fear field during those last couple of months while he was in retrograde could have been amped up in some ways. So it's an interesting day, but also he will begin to pick up speed slowly and move beyond the 7-degree mark that he made it to in the first 3 months of his being in Pisces. So we'll have some new energy coming in as we move into the new year. So it's always nice to know what Saturn is doing because he put pressure on us to do our due diligence. So wherever people have Pisces in their charts, this is where Saturn is turning direct and where the lessons that you've been amassing inwardly over the last few months will be played out in the real world. So for some people, that means a lot of ease and flow being reestablished. For others, it might be difficult. Maybe you didn't get the message about what it was that Saturn wanted you to work through. And you'll have another opportunity, of course, to do that as time goes on. All right. Any questions about
No,
that from anybody?
no. So obviously, Janet, you're making perfect sense. It's interesting when you're commenting on all of this in retrospect to sort of go, oh, okay, so that makes sense in my world because of what's been happening.
Yeah.
It explains
I had
a
I
little
had
bit.
an aha this morning when I was talking about this because Tam, she threw out the words victim energy and martyr energy, which is definitely an aspect of Saturn in Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this moment where I just realized that these previous months of Saturn in retrograde been really hard on me in my inner world because I was playing this role of victim in different ways
Mm-hmm.
in my life, a victim of circumstance, a victim of, whatever wasn't happening that I really wanted to have happen and all of that. And so now, this morning I had this aha and I'm like, oh my gosh, something for me to process through, right? So people, you may have those ahas and it might not come in that same way where you're like, oh, now I know what this means. But you might start to pull the threads together and see the logic in or the story in what's been happening for you since the end of May when Saturn went into retrograde. And that
Mm-hmm.
was like, boom, I got this, right? I don't know what I'm going to do with it, with that knowledge or awareness, but I don't need to know that. I just need to follow what
Mm-hmm.
comes next. So it is so interesting, right? Because the planet has not yet turned direct, but he's already at the degree that he will turn direct at. So we're already beginning the push to bring these things up to the surface so that they can be healed and released or processed through.
Mm-hmm.
Fun stuff. Now, when we go into the second week of November, now
Yep.
we're dealing with trine energy. I love how the universe makes this so easy for me to plot for
Yeah.
everybody. All oppositions in the first week. In the second week, we're dealing with trines and a sextile and an opposition. We've already talked about opposition. So now we just need to know what is a trine. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in a trine, that is a very positive relationship between planets. They are in the same element, right? So the first one that comes up is Venus in a trine to Pluto. Venus is in Virgo, Pluto is in Capricorn, both Earth signs. So we have really good energy between those planets. And a trine, when we hear that word, this is 120 degrees between the planets, right? So we are essentially dividing the chart, if you will, into three. So we take the 360 degrees of the circle of the zodiac wheel, we divide that by three, and we get 120 degrees. And that resulting relationship is flowing, it is filled with ease, and sometimes can become a place in our own lives where we get a little lazy because things are working so smoothly. Why take things up? Why work harder than I have to? So it's important to understand that trines, while they have this ease and flow of the energy, they can also be places where we could be great if we applied ourselves, took one more step, did one more thing. But sometimes we just settle for great or good instead of being great, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, ideally, right? Nothing wrong at all. but it's just something to be aware of in your life, right? Where am I going with the flow so much that I am not jumping up to the next part of the spiral, and taking myself to the next level? So on the 6th, your 7th, where we get Venus in a trine to Pluto, this will be about enhancing your own personal power within your relationships. Pluto rules power and power struggles. It's about empowerment or disempowerment. And because it's Venus, what we're looking at is our relationships. So one might think, okay, where in my relationships have things become so comfortable that I just let things slide by instead of grabbing onto my core in the relationship? And I think about
Mhm.
this with, people who are in very contentious relationships, perhaps, but they're afraid to leave that relationship because it's comfortable, it's known,
Mm.
right? And it may not be the best of relationships, but the unknown is so much more uncomfortable. So with Venus and Pluto coming together this way, take a look at your relationships and what's working, what's not working. Where are
Mhm.
you being taken for granted? And also might be where have you been taken for granted? And how do we work through those issues, right? How do we say to our significant other, I need this. I
Yeah.
really desire this in my relationship so that we can have this open line of communication. That same day, Mercury is also in a trine, positive relationship with Neptune. So we
Mhm.
have the potential here for messages, divine transmission, where we are passing on those messages of a divine nature to others, but we can also be receiving divine inspiration. So to me, when Mercury and Neptune come together, it's a positive virtual relationship, but it can play havoc with the mind because the mind is kind of undone here. So if you're trying to be logical, it isn't probably going to be as easy to be logical as it is to just be irrational or not worried so much about the logic and the details and the plans and all of that. Kind of be a little looser in your mind that day.
It's
Oh,
You mentioned awareness, Janet, and that really is a key, isn't it?
yeah,
Because it helps us, if we're aware, then we can understand a little bit of what might be happening for ourselves, and we can change our attitude to go a little more with the flow. Some people, we wonder why something might not be happening, but maybe we're holding on to the idea so strongly, it the universe isn't able to do anything about it.
yeah, yeah. So part of that might be about learning to detach a bit,
Right.
being more
Hmm.
objective, not holding the tight expectation of how things should be, and
Hmm.
instead allowing spirit to do the miracle magic that it can do when we get out of the
Exactly.
way. So that
Mm.
will be that day. Um, Later that week, Venus will be changing signs. She'll be moving out of that very grounded Virgoan energy and into Libra. This is her sign, right? So, as far as Venus is concerned, from the 8th all the way through the end of the month, she's going to be in her happy spot, right? Libra, relationships, love, romance, affection, values and valuation, being valuable, intrinsic value, money, and perhaps the flow of money being very important during this period of time. So that's a banner day. It's green on my little calendar. You have green days and you have red days. It's a green day because Venus moving into Libra, she becomes empowered, right? She's in her home. So an empowered Venus. Now, on that same day, we have another aspect called a sextile that shows up between Mercury and Pluto. So, what is a sextile? Now, a sextile is a 60-degree relationship between the planets. So, we take the 360-degree wheel, we divide it by six, and we end up with a sextile, right? That is giving us some very positive energy. Because the signs themselves are two signs away, right? They sit in an equal number, right? Two, and they are considered compatible here or in compatible energies. Um, there's a sort of camaraderie that shows up between planets in signs that are in a 60-degree relationship. Their energies work harmoniously together. Even if the planets themselves don't always see eye to eye, when they're placed in signs that see eye to eye, the whole of the energy field gets to work much easier, right? So we get some positive synergistic energies that we can play with. And for example, if Mars is in a synergistic relationship with, let's say, Neptune, which typically when you think of Mars and Neptune, they're in two different worlds. Mars is all
Mhm.
fire and Neptune is, water. Fire wants to move and take steps, and Neptune is, yeah, la, 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 let's just wander around. So, yet, if they become in a sextile relationship in signs that work well together, they sort of align with one another and they'll go, okay, so how do we take action that supports each other, right? That is how this can work out in a positive way. Now, that particular day, though, the sextile is between Mercury and Pluto, Mercury being a planet of communication, of the mind, Pluto being a planet of transformation, of empowerment, of regeneration. So we have the ability perhaps to put words to what it is that we need to change. Our minds might be very willing and able to accept what it is that is being, brought to our attention so that we can take steps to move forward. So, good day. It's a good day, followed by the next day. There's always something, right? The next day on the ninth, my ninth, your 10th, Mercury, the planet of communication, moves into Sagittarius, the blunt communicator of the zodiac. So you can almost just hear it now, right? People just saying the first things that come to their minds, not really putting in the filters, able to, just say what they mean without any filters, which can be hurtful if things are coming out bluntly. So we want to watch for from the ninth to the next month, the beginning of the next month, um, what we say. And not only that, but how we say it, right? Because sometimes how you say something is more important than the words you say. So, Mercury, the communicator in the sign of bluntness, means we all want to watch how we speak to one another.
Mm.
And we can even help remind others who have spoken down to us or have spoken bluntly to us that you you could probably have said that in a nicer way and I would understand it better. But
Mhm.
also understanding on your part that maybe this person doesn't know anything about astrology, has no clue that Mercury's just moved into Sagittarius and they're being a verbal gunslinger rather than a verbal empowerer.
Mhm.
So we want to be careful. It's beautiful because Sagittarius is a creative sign and it's optimistic, right? It's ruled by Jupiter. There's a lot of optimism. So we may be, you know, also very excited about things that we see in the world. And we can be energetically excited to the point where we claim that we can do certain things and then we fall flat on our faces because we've overcommitted from being overly optimistic. So we do have to watch the energy, even though it's a positive, expression for Mercury, it can lead us to over, commit our time or commit to what we think we can do. So we'll have to be a little careful about that. And then on the 11th of November, Mars will be in an opposition to Uranus. So we already talked about oppositions, right? We have the need to harmonize, to bring into balance energies on two opposite sides. Well, Mars is in Scorpio, a sign he rules, while Uranus is in Taurus. So we have these two powerful planets cross from one another, but one of them is empowered, and that's Mars. Mars is empowered because he's a co-ruler of the sign of Scorpio, where he is during this opposition. And Uranus, not a very happy camper in Taurus, right? He likes to the excitement and he likes to take action and be free. And in Taurus, there's these more constricted elements, right? It's an earth sign. So there's this need to be practical and down to earth. And Uranus is like, I want to go there. Who cares how much it costs, right? So the opposition will force us to sort of balance our actions and our activities in a way that is supported, right? In a way that is harmony and balance, right? Rather than going off half-cocked, which is what we can do very easily when Mars and Uranus come together to play. We will want to make sure that we are doing things in a way that really um, protects us somewhat from, being in this dynamo state and then having to draw it all back the next day or the next couple of days later. So watch what you commit to, watch what you spend your time on, and try to harmonize the energies of doing and being, right? Don't overwork yourself. Now, the 13th,
The
that's your
14th.
birthday, right?
So
The
did you say
13th,
the 13th or the 14th?
13th,
13th.
13th is the day of the new moon, right? The first moon of the month comes up there. And wow, what a doozy of a day for you to have your birthday. Now, of
Mm.
course, it really depends on where you are on your birthday and um, when these actually happen. But that day, literally, the moon is lighting up everything, right? So I'm going to say these things, and those of you who've just now sort of learned what some of these transits are about, we have the moon in a conjunction to the sun. That's the very definition of a new moon. And we haven't talked about conjunctions yet, but that's a blending of the energies of the two planets, right? So we're blending the sun and its light with the reflected light of the moon. And that gives us this gateway to manifesting our dreams, setting intentions, etc. But we
Mm-hmm.
also have the moon in an opposition to Uranus. Opposition, we're going to have to harmonize our inner needs and wants and desires against Uranus's wanting to free us from those wants and needs and desires, helping us to be a little less attached to how those things turn out. The moon will also be in a conjunction to Mars. Yikes, right?
Yeah.
Moon, emotion, Mars, very assertive energy or aggressive even, and will be in a trine to Neptune, and the moon will be in a sextile to Pluto and a square, which we haven't even touched on yet, to Saturn. So it is a day with a lot of, I call it a sort of ragdoll day, right? Where you're being sort of flipped from one thing to another. And, the new moon itself is in the sign of Scorpio. So there can be some real depth being brought to the surface, some things being dredged up from the past, perhaps. Maybe being able to see more clearly what's been stopping you from the level of the mind, or what has been stopping you from letting go. What do I need to let go of?
Mm-hmm.
Releasing. So if I want to start something new, this is a hell of a day to do it. But because it's in Scorpio, I might just need to have the practice of letting go and releasing attachments or things or relationships or people or jobs or ideas or inspiration. So many things might need to have to get moved out of the way in order to find your path clear to what you want to create. So, interesting day, very interesting day. And so your
Mm-hmm.
birthday is on a new moon.
Yes.
And you're
Whoa.
70, I think you said this year. You're turning 70.
Mm.
So, right, great energy for a new start, right? A new start in some
A
way.
new phase.
Yeah, a new
Mm.
phase. New phase. I can't wait to see. I'm gonna have to go look at your chart and see what the heck is going on with you. Just because that day so we have the conjunction again of the sun and the moon, and that is the blending of those two energies. The other thing that was new here was the square. And a square is the most challenging, even against the opposition, where we have this need to balance and harmonize. With the
Mm,
square, it is like the hope that is, challenging you to do something or to, take those next steps or to let something go or whatever it is you're being challenged. And in this case, it's the moon that's being uh, challenging or being challenged by Saturn. And Saturn and the moon come together often and create melancholy that
uh-huh.
we don't often understand. We think we're depressed, or we think, or we say even, I'm depressed. Are you, or are you just feeling it? I'm feeling
Right.
it. And so the
Mm,
moon in that new moon category is calling us inward, calling us into introspection, but it is extraordinarily creative energy. When the moon comes into that square with Saturn, we're being called inward so that we can take on the inner part of the creation cycle, right? The inward. It's like a baby being born. We can't just like pop out the baby whenever we want to, right? There's this process that's going on, and it's mostly internal. We don't see the results of it until we actually birth the creation. Same thing happens in our lives with ideas, with jobs, with relationships, with, anything out creative. It has its moment of internal focus where it can feel lower energy. And then it can also then change to the outer expression of it, which is when we have more of the appearance then of what our creative intent has been. Does that all make sense?
yes.
Doozy of a day, Annette. Holy moly. In a good way. I mean that in a good way. Even though
Yeah.
it's a red day, I think it's
Seize,
just the square that makes it that. But
seize the day, I say.
seize the day,
Janet,
seize the moment.
you very kindly gave me that link. However, I'm not
Uh-huh.
able to copy and paste. So what I will try and do is to
Oh,
put it onto Angel Heart Radio Facebook page later.
well, let me see if right now that without creating a havoc in my sound. I always am hesitant to do this while I'm on air
Very clever woman,
because, it can
multitasking.
be reverberating echo. Yeah, I'm going to try this, but my other ideas. Oh, there's Angel Heart Radio. Look at that. Popped right up.
Oh, well done.
And uh, is that the right page now? We'll know in a minute.
I did smile before because Tammy was saying
There we
T is for
go.
trouble. We had double trouble on the show this morning.
Did you?
Well, we had
Buddy?
We
I
had Tom and Tammy. So,
the two T's. T squared.
yeah.
And Betty Tippett's two meal isn't with us. Then we have T quadruple, maybe. Uh, so let's see here. That is me and you. That is Anayah and somebody. So here we go. And what I am posting here, pink for people to go and purchase the almanac because today is the day that it launches in April. Uh, so
Hmm.
done. All right. It's 444 my time. I love that. 444, building a solid foundation. Okay, so we have a lot more to cover here. Let me speed up a titch. Uh, Later in the month, of course, we have the sun moving into Sagittarius, and
Hmm.
always a great time of the year, right? It brings us to our creative expression. It is optimistic. We're usually kind of excited about this time of year because we're anticipating the holidays, right? The peace of
Right.
Christmas, the gift giving, the making of cookies, the sharing of family time. So we have a real optimistic kind of beginning or middle, I would say, of the month, the 22nd of November. And of course, in like the cosmic joke of the universe, that's followed by a square between the sun now and Saturn on Thanksgiving Day in the USA, which means that families are gathered and it's possible that, people won't be in necessarily good moods. Maybe their favorite team doesn't win the football game.
Mm.
Maybe they're having to sit at the dinner table with people, family members that they don't really like. So I'm just going to tell you all that on Thanksgiving Day, the extra Thanksgiving Day in the USA, but anybody around the world, use that day with, treat that day, let's say, with an extra dose of gratitude, with love, with patience, right? That's going to be called for on that day. And then the next day, which begins, I don't know, Black Friday. Do you guys participate in Black
Yeah, we
Friday?
do. Yes.
Drives me crazy. I do most of my shopping online because I can't stand everybody scrabbling around in the stores. And that particular day, the Black Friday this year, Mars, the god of war, the
Mm.
action planet, moves into Sagittarius, a fire sign, a sign he's fairly comfortable in, but also finds a lot of traction for conflict and confrontation. Fire, right? Fire, fire. So, anybody going out for
Yeah.
Black Friday this year, be calm and cool, right? Don't beat each other over the heads trying to get your favorite toy, doll, whatever it is that's the thing for the year. Um, have some restraint, have some jolliness about you. Know that other people may be in bad moods, but you don't have to be drawn
Mm.
into the mood, right? You can rise above it all and just have some fun, right? Be generous, be magnanimous. It is a day for that, actually. So we have that. And then the very next day, the 25th, which turns out to be a Saturday on my side of the world, be Sunday on your side of the world, I'm thinking. Mars will square Saturn. So we've had the moon square Saturn, and we've had the sun squaring Saturn, and now we have Mars squaring Saturn. So now we may feel a little bit like our wings have been clipped, right? We have to become more focused, more purposeful, more intention behind everything that we do in order to make things work the way that we want them to. And in
Mm.
doing so, we may definitely find ourselves having to set aside things that we wanted to do in favor of things that we got to do, right?
Right.
There's something about that. Mars has a lot of ability to take action. He's very busy that way. And Saturn puts Mars a little bit in a box here and says, but we're going to do it this way. You have to do this first, and then you can
Mm.
do this. You can't spend more than what your budget allows because you're going to pay the price for that later. So, lots of weird things there around kind of feeling a little bit boxed in, not as a punishment, though. I think sometimes when we feel those boundaries that are kicking in, like limitations, we kind of buck that. We don't really want to accept the fact that we have these limitations. We'll just put that on a shelf and just be okay with whatever the boundaries are or the limitations are that seem to appear because they're actually working for your benefit here. They're not punitive. They're not, oh, you did something bad, so now you have to only be in this, playpen size area. No, it's not that at all. It's about really understanding the universe is your friend. And sometimes those boundaries are what's absolutely needed in order for you to do the work that you're here to do.
Mhm.
We just might not like it all that
Mm.
much. I know that's how I'm going to react to that. So I'm going to respond instead and just go, okay, what can I do? So the trick is to look for what pathways are opened up for you instead of beating your head against the one that's closed down or being angry that
Sure.
the one you wanted to take is closed down. Look around and see, okay, well, what is opening up instead, right?
It's
Be a little
it's
more
easy for
proactive.
us, Janet, isn't it, to uh, just be focused on one particular thing and wondering why isn't this happening? Why can't I do this? Rather than stepping back and looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly. That square from Mars to Saturn will really reward those who are doing the work within those boundaries or limits. And the boundary or limit could be just the goal that you laid out for yourself. And maybe you lost sight of the goal and you're like way over here. And all you need to do is just come back and refocus, right? That could be rewarded. But if you look at that and go, no, I don't want to do that, then karma can set in and it can be literally changed for you
Mm,
because you weren't listening or paying attention. So it's not necessarily bad, but it can feel a little constricting. It's all in how you look at it. Um, the next day, the 26th, is the day before the full moon, and Jupiter, our fair weathered friend, is changing gates in human design. Now, the gates in human design are traits that we all have within our DNA, let's say. And it is changing into a gate called accountability or responsibility. The gate 27 is a gate that sits on the sacral center. So it has a lot of energy, sustainable life force energy associated with it. But its true lesson, if you will, is about nurturing, being responsible and accountable for your own nurturing and
hmm
watching how you take responsibility away from others. Instead of helping them to become accountable for themselves, you do everything for them because it's easier,
mm,
right? I'm just going to take over this project and do it all myself because it's just easier. Instead of
mm,
allowing someone who was meant to do that job or that whatever to become accountable by learning and making the mistakes that they might need to make. So, Jupiter here, being the principle of growth and expansion, will be teaching us in a very big way about things like self nurturing, about how we take care of ourselves and how we take care of one another. And it could be the things like cooking or sharing values or, you know, checking in with people to make sure everybody's doing good, that type of thing. So Jupiter will be in that respect or in that gate for about 30 days. So we'll have some time to get used to that. But it has kind of a feel good energy as long as you don't take over other people's lives, right? That you
mm,
don't just take over and instead, uplift, right? Train, teach, share the values of why we do things this way or why this works better, but without taking away the responsibility from another person. It's very much the concept of what is it that in the Bible is give a man a fish and you feed him for one day, but teach him how to fish and he can feed himself for a lifetime. That's
mhm,
that kind of energy that will be moving Jupiter into. And the moon is also very activated that day before she goes into the full moon state. And there's a conjunction to Uranus, a sextile to Neptune, right? These are fairly good energies. There's a trine to Pluto, and there's that square to Saturn. Again, that square keeps popping up all month long. And
mhm,
the opposition to Mars. So we have a mixed bag of energies going into the full moon, but then we get to the full moon, right? That's on the 27th. And we have Venus, excuse me, that is not Venus, that is Mercury. Mercury in a square to Neptune. And that's literally about the only major aspect for the full moon. And the moon, the only aspect the moon is making is the opposition to the sun. So we have a more gentle full moon than we had as a new moon 2 weeks previous. So expect
right.
the full moon to be a little easier to take even with the square from Mercury to Neptune, it will definitely not be a time to make decisions because the mind won't be clear, right? The square to Neptune and Mercury makes things scattered or focus lost easily or just not enough information. And we may feel pushed or forced to try to make decisions, but I'm going to tell you, try not to, especially big decisions.
Right.
Try to hold off making those big decisions until a few days later, maybe into December even, to allow that Mercury square Neptune to fade away. Because it's just, we're indecisive. We may waffle going back and forth. We're not sure. And then we make a decision and then we find out it was the wrong decision, but you won't find that out for a day or two later. So if it's a big decision, just hold. Don't make any big splashes when it comes to the end of a month. Now, that day is also the moon in Gemini. That is also a problem for making decisions because Gemini moon tends to focus or scatter our energy, right? Our concentration isn't quite there. And trying to make a big decision during that kind of a transit, no. Just sit back and go with the flow that day. Do not try to make big decisions. And then that is pretty much how we end the month of November. The moon has various other aspects going on. But hopefully, everybody now kind of gets this idea of what these transits mean, or at least that was my hope, that we are understanding these words that connect these two planets are really about the relationship that they have with one another. Some an ease and flow, as in the trine and the sextile, some that are a little more difficult, as in the opposition and the square, and one that is sort of neutral, and that would be the conjunction. It's really neutral isn't the best word, but it's the blending of two energies. So it can be a good or a bad, good or a bad. It just depends on where it is and what the two planets are that's involved. So, thanks. That's a lot of information for one show. Hopefully, everybody came to some kind of understanding.
Well, there's certainly a lot of information. The thing
Mhm.
is, Janet, people can re-watch if they want to down the track to make sure that, did I quite understand that or what's this particular day about? Tammy had a question. So
Yep.
Pisces is in the fourth house. How will that affect me?
So, changes in home, in family, in your concept of foundation, um, in even things like preparing for your eventual, because I know you're not ready yet, but eventual retirement. How am I set up as far as the roots go, right? Do I have a solid foundation? And I'm thinking what you're meaning is about Saturn in Pisces in the fourth house. So um, there may be some blurred lines in the family at the moment where maybe responsibilities aren't quite clear as to who does what in the family. Just bide your time. Don't go into fear. Stay solid, right? Even if it's kind of pie in the sky, not clear what's going on, try to stay sane, practical, grounded, um, and and just know that it's that family sector that is being impacted. So family and traditions, even as you go into the holidays, right? Traditions are important to us. And it can be a strengthening of your foundation, but it can also be clearly showing you where you've gotten too grounded in the foundation and you need to loosen it up a little bit and embrace sort of the formlessness of it. Ooh, it's tough, right? These are tough. We'll have to wait and see how it shows up. You might already know, Tammy, what kind of things, because this would have been happening for you from March 7th until about May 25th, I think it was, when Saturn turned retrograde. And so you might have gotten an idea of how your family or your foundation was being changed or impacted. And now we're back to it, back to it. So you get to relive it a second time, hopefully this time from a much wiser position. God, I hope that helps.
And Janet, how interesting. Yes, you were giving Tammy the reading, so to
Yeah.
speak, but the information, but it's so true for everybody. You know, we tend to go into fear, don't we? And or we can tend to go into fear. And to be aware that that's what we're doing and to be able to go, okay, not going there,
Yeah.
uh, is, yes, a
It's priceless.
reminder to everybody.
Yeah. And of course, Piscean energy, the fear field is about um, where where we might feel like a victim or where we're playing
Mm,
the role of the victim or where
right.
we've placed ourselves in the role of martyr. So that can play out in the family dynamic in your instance, Tammy. And so we get to look at that and say, okay, well, where is that victim martyr playing out? Where am I playing that role? Or where are others playing that role with me? Because it can work
Mm.
both ways.
Well, Janet, we are out of time. How amazing. It just
Time flies when
zaps,
we're
doesn't
having
it?
fun.
It does. And
Yeah,
I trust that people have gained some very important information when we traverse and live through November. And and it's wonderful to understand that, yes, the planets do impact on us. So we might be feeling a certain way or having confusion. Please remember this show and visit Angel Heart Radio Facebook page or YouTube, Angel Heart Radio on YouTube, and you can re-watch. And that's always worth knowing that that information is there.
yeah.
So, Janet, thank you, thank you, thank you. It has
Thank you,
been
Annette.
informative and fun as usual, and I trust that that's been the same for our audience. Have a wonderful, wonderful November, everybody. And Janet, and I look forward to seeing you, oh my goodness me, in December.
In
When we do
December.
this monthly, it just happens so quickly, doesn't it?
Right? It's boom. There it is again. And you have a wonderful birthday. You're going to be on a cruise, I heard. So have fun, be playful, enjoy.
Oh, thank you. I'll do all
You're
of that.
welcome. All right.
And may we all remember to be playful, to bring in the love, to bring in the fun, and make every day count.
Exactly.
Bye for now.